Hey everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of If I Knew Then Mom Edition podcast. I'm your host, Maria, and I'm so excited to see you here. This podcast is all about the real motherhood stories, those unfiltered, powerful lessons we wish somebody would have told us before we became moms. Whether it's about healing, identity, or those tiny humans that teach us more about ourselves than we have ever imagined, this space is for it all. Today, I am honored to have an incredible guest and a friend of mine, Lindsay. Hi, Lindsay. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm super excited. I think it's great that you're doing a whole show on the premise of the things we wish we knew earlier. I think it's great.
Yeah. The biggest thing is like I've been catching myself so much. And I think as they get older, phrase tends to pop up even more in my head of like, oh man, I wish I would have known. I wish I would have known. I wish I would have known. And it's kind of like, I wonder how many moms go through this. And then I'm pretty sure if I would have been able to have a podcast of stories of moms of like the things that they wish they would have known beforehand, it probably would have been more helpful.
It's like almost like a junk drawer full of like nuggets of info that you're like, oh, that would have been helpful to know. What the heck? But I can more than relate. And it's funny too, because you're, especially with like your first, right? You're going through trial by fire, you're learning it on the fly. But the really interesting thing you learn the first go around is that you can handle just about anything because you have to. You have to figure it out, right? You can figure it out because you have to. So by the time the second one comes around, there'll probably be a totally different child, right? But you know that you can actually figure it out, which is a kind of a cool thing. Because the first time you're like, I'm trying not to break you. I don't, you're scared to do all the things, right? And by the second one, it's a completely different shift of like, figure it out. We got this. And it's a very different perspective.
Oh, yeah. I mean, definitely when my second one came along, everything is just more lenient. And then it's also not having enough, like the same amount of time to be able to dedicate that, I guess, that anxiety or that worry that you constantly have with your first because
Yeah,
you don't
like
have the
we're
time.
sitting here Googling every little thing and analyzing every little decision. And so I only have one child, and poor girl. I'm talking to experts on everything, especially I'm in the baby space, talking to experts about everything. And like before we did potty training, I went through like potty training course and, expert help and all of the things. But it's just so funny, like how much there is to know when you have your first, you're like, every decision feels like the world's biggest decision. It's wild.
It is wild. It is wild. And from what I heard, because I only have two, and from what I've heard, those moms that have more than two, it's like, oh, they'll be fine. It is such a like, kind of like, he'll figure it out. Oh, it's fine. His other brother's there, like, type of comments. And it's just like, it's incredible, really, how things tend to start playing out. And I recently met a mom that she has four kids. And she was like, people ask me which one's easier to have three or four kids. And she was like, for me, I would say four because they tend to like even themselves
Equal.
out.
Yeah. There's not really just like a middle child.
Exactly.
Interesting. That's so interesting. It was funny. I was talking to my daughter yesterday and I go, Isla, she'll be 4 in a couple weeks. I go, Isla, because we were thinking we would be one and done. And after we had her, we were like, yeah, like she's cool. We don't need to roll the dice twice. We'll ride with this, right? And I go, Isla, I said, are you okay being just mommy, daddy, and you? She goes, yeah. I go, you don't want a brother or sister? No, this is great. All right. She's like, but I need a bigger room though. I'm like, girl, she's the right personality to be an only child. No desire for siblings. And it's funny because everybody else I know, all her little friends, her cousins are all begging for siblings. And she's the only one that's like, nah, I'm good, thanks.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure if I would have probably asked my oldest, she would have been probably the same because she has that type of personality of like independence, of
Yeah.
like, like I've seen, videos of her in school and she doesn't like, she interacts with other kids, but it's like very individualized, it's not like two or three kids. It's just like one kid at a time.
Yes.
And it's very interesting, and I don't know if it's because it's kind of like, I guess, I know a lot of moms kind of like hate the expression, but it's kind of like a COVID baby type of situation that most COVID
Mhm.
babies tend to not be as social, right, as most kids used to be and are nowadays. Because my 2-year-old, she comes inside the classroom and like three kids come up to her and just like scream out for her. And I'm like, wow, this is like the complete opposite as my
Mhm.
first. It's just wild.
That is very wild. Yeah, my daughter's like that too. She's independent. Her people are her people, and she likes a small she can get along with anybody, but she prefers a smaller group of people, and those are her people. And she's just very independent. And here's my first, this is what I wish I knew. Everybody and their brother and was telling me how like when you've got a a newborn, they want to be rocked and held and close to mom and all the things. These are like that. And that really would have been great to know because I was causing my daughter more upset and frustration because funny enough, she ended up like me. We're not big cuddlers. She actually wanted to be in her own room. She actually wanted to be put down in her crib, not held, rocked, cuddled, any of that to try to fall asleep. And it is so funny because it took me until the 4 month mark is when we were like, okay, we're gonna start working on a sleep schedule, right, and making sure we're doing healthy sleep habits here. Now, I wouldn't really call it sleep training, but it was because prior it was taking me hours every night of rocking her and holding her and bouncing with her, and she wasn't falling asleep. And it was this horrible, stressful situation. Then maybe she'd sleep for 45 minutes. It was awful. It was awful. And then around the 4 month mark, they're like, oh, you can start sleep training and start working on schedules and, sleep cues and all that good stuff. And we had always been really intentional about from day one having a bedtime routine that we could figure out would work for us because eventually we knew she would start picking up on it, right? And yeah, so once I started, like, putting her down for, like, 30 seconds, and I was like, "She's happier." She wanted to be put down. She wanted to just be let down in her own crib, and she's also because everyone always says too, like, "You don't want your baby to be cold, right?" No, girlfriend's a heater. She's a furnace. That was the other thing of, like, the common advice was she was actually too hot and we had to it was so funny, we figured out that if our house got over 71 degrees, she'd wake up. So we had to, like, freeze our house out, and that's how she was comfiest. But that's how I'm comfiest for sleeping. So it was, like, the funniest thing because all my nieces and like, they're all very, like, gotta be bundled up and cozy and warm, or they can't sleep. If they're cold, they can't sleep. And my daughter's been the opposite. She just blackout curtain, sound machine, chill the room, get out. Like that, it's just so funny. And I wish I knew back then that some babies can actually be overstimulated by rocking and holding them too much and that they actually have a preference. They don't want to be held all the time. That would have been great.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the funniest part that, from pregnancy to babies to toddlerhood, and we tend to put just even the moms like in categories or in boxes, and this is the expectation, and this is what they really are, and this is how you should
Hmm.
and shouldn't, and this and that. And it's true. Like my youngest was and still not that much like she likes to cuddle during the day and she likes to be on top of me, but she doesn't like me to hug
Oh.
her.
Oh.
So I'm like, "Okay, so what do you want?" And she just wants to just chill there. That's all she wants.
Yeah.
Like,
Just
kind
to
of like little
exist
cat,
right
kind of
there.
like, "Okay, if you're there, I'm here, we're good." My oldest, she would always want to be on top, but then that's because she had reflux. You had to like hold her up
Mm,
for over an hour. If not, like she would choke on her reflux, all these things.
mm.
And then she just was like, she would tell me like, no more kisses, too much kisses. I don't want to hug. I asked my second one, like, do you want kiss? Do you want a hug? No. And she just walks
Okay.
away, and I'm like, "Okay, not taking it personal at all." And I just laugh about it because, I ask these questions to them, and most parents don't. They just go ahead and hug them
Yeah.
and things like that, and we just don't realize that some kids just don't want it, don't like it,
Right.
And that is something that I wish I would have known beforehand because, yeah, it's a huge struggle because they're pushing you away, and then you feel like you're doing something wrong.
Right. And we're trying to show love the way we were taught to show love. And that may not be like my daughter would rather be tickled than like so before she goes to bed at night, she wants to tickle us and have us tickle her and all of that. And like for her, that is actually a way of showing love and closeness more so than hugging and cuddling and all of that. And it is just so funny to see how their love language isn't what we might assume it would be. And with her too, like the more we're learning, right, we were forced to hug our family members when we were kids. And I always hated it because I'm not a huggy person. So with her, I tell her, I'm like, listen, you have to acknowledge, like say hello and goodbye to people. You don't have to give hugs. You don't have to give kisses. Like you don't have to do that. But you have to at least acknowledge them and say hello, goodbye. That's really it. So that's something we're doing a little differently than, from when I was a child, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, we're doing that too, and as my oldest gets older, we've realized that she's not really much of a morning person. Like yeah. She wakes up, like, around 7, like, it's an alarm clock. I don't need an alarm clock, she's mine,
Yep.
and
That's that.
and
Mhm.
yeah, she comes in and, she says hi to me, she wants to be with us, she wants to cuddle, if anything, and then that's it. But if, my mom calls, my sister calls, or somebody calls, she's like, "I don't wanna talk to them." Mind you, my mom
Yes.
is one of her favorite type of person out there in the
Yeah.
world, and she's like, "No, I don't wanna say hi. No, I don't wanna look at her." And just very
Oh,
straightforward, and I'm very proud of my mom because my mom is the type of generation that, like yours, like, they'll obligate you to say hi with a hug, with the kiss, you have to say hi, and at this point, the cool thing about, like, my family now, because I've taught them kind of like, we can't be I don't want to force my girls to have to say hi,
right.
you know? Because at the end of the day, you as an adult, do you really wanna be hugging every single person? Not
No,
really,
sure
right?
don't.
So there's a lot of things like that, and my mom, at the beginning, she was like, "Oh, but hug me," and I looked at her, I was like, "But she doesn't want to." "Oh, but I want a hug," and I'm like, "I could give you a hug." And
And
she's
that's
like,
how they
"Okay."
were taught to show love, and that's just their norm of comings and goings, and yeah, it's very, very, very different. Other thing too is I've noticed my parents were a bit older, and they were used to guilting of like, "Oh, it's gonna make me sad if you don't give me a hug or a kiss or anything like that," and it's just very different, right? And how each generation is looking to do things a little different. Of like, oh, we hated that as a kid. So now we're shifting it and changing it. And we want this generation to be have more autonomy over their own bodies. Yes, you be polite, but you still have your boundaries. And so that's just a really interesting thing to watch happen. Um, for sure.
Yeah. The guilting part, I'm gonna be very honest. I try my best not to do it because it is hard. It is hard because you were brought up with that type of mentality,
Yeah.
and there's sometimes that it does come out, like,
Mhm.
"Oh, but I really wanted a hug," and she looks at me, she's like, kinda like with the face, like, "Okay, now what do I do? Because I don't know how to handle kinda like your emotions," and then I was like, "Okay." I was like, "It's okay. You if you don't want to," that kinda like my reasoning kinda like
Right.
comes back into place of like, "No, it's okay. You don't have to." Like, "Mommy's happy, don't worry." My mom, reassuring her that my feelings aren't she's not responsible
Yeah.
for my feelings.
Right, exactly. I try to it's so funny because if I'm all ushy gushy, my daughter's not like that. And I'm typically not like that. She's just not. And so if I'm like, oh, can I have a hug? She's gonna be like, no. But but if I'm like, how fast can you run over and give me the tightest squeeze you could ever give? If I gamify it, she's down. Then she'll try to give a squeeze. But she's so funny because she'll like give you the side hug, like lean into you, or the backwards hug. So if she actually gives you like a forward arms around you hug, that girl means it. And those are like gold. And it's just so incredibly funny.
That's hilarious. Oh my goodness. Yeah. No, my both of my girls are very honest. Like, this 2-year-old, she'll be like, "No quiero, mama. I don't
Mhm.
want to. No quiero."
Nothing.
It's like, "Okay." Or "No gusta. I don't like it." Or "No thanks. No gracias." And she's only
Yeah.
2, man, like, and she's already like, "No. No, it's a no, and I don't want to." And I think as the earlier in motherhood that you learned how to truly listen to them and
Yeah.
respect our boundaries, the less tantrums you're going to get.
Yep. And you know what's really interesting too? Realizing one of the things I needed to learn that I then had to help my husband learn is that you can do all the right things, right? You can follow the perfect bedtime routine that works almost every single night. At the end of the day, they are not robots. And that's the way I have to wrap my head around it. I'm an adult and I have nights where I can't sleep, or I have moments of I'm struggling emotionally and I don't want to talk to anybody or do anything. And they are not robots. They too have those moments. And just making sure, I remember that too, because especially as a first time parent, you're like, well, we did this and we did that with the routine. And now she's not sleeping, or she doesn't want to eat, or she only did half of a bottle. What did I do wrong? And it's like, at the end of the day, we're not robots. And they're not.
Yeah. Yeah. The other day, So my sister has a 1-year-old, and after her diagnosis, like my dad has been the one that's been helping take care of my nephew and my sister when she goes through her chemotherapy, right? And she's going through that rough week. And the other day, my sister calls me and she was like, "Hey, he's not really he's not really acting like himself." And I'm like, "Okay, but what's going on?" He's just not really eating. Mind you, this kid, is almost the same height and almost the same weight as my 2-year-old, okay? Like he loves to eat, okay? And she's like, "Yeah, he's not really eating. I don't know." I'm like, "Okay, but is he acting like himself?" Start asking the
Right.
typical questions like, "Does he have diarrhea? Is he vomiting? Fever?" Like runny nose, like trying to figure out him. No, he's just not really eating. So I look, I was like, Paula, do you like to eat every day? Are you hungry all the time, every time?" No, but it's just not really like him. I'm like, okay, but just like all of us, there's days that we don't want to eat. So then my
Right.
dad calls me like 2 hours later because she had to go to a doctor's appointment. Calls me 2 hours. Yeah, like, I'm worried. I'm like, "Why?" "Because he's not really eating as much, like, he always eats everything on the plate." And I start giggling and I was like, "Listen, you don't want to eat sometimes, and that's okay, right?" "Yes." "Okay." Same thing goes for the babies. And, we tend
Yeah.
to forget that just because they're babies doesn't mean that they don't go through these phases where
Right.
we might be restless or whatever it is that
Or
we
like
just don't
if
want it.
your brain is just on something, right? Like you're just, with my daughter, if she's too into playing or learning something new or whatever, sometimes they just can be too busy to stop and want to eat. Like I got things to do. Thanks. And I experience that as an adult. Like sometimes I'm too busy to stop and remember or, be hungry enough to eat. And yeah, it's funny how like there's a lot of overthinking we do as new parents. And it's weird too because then there's other elements that we don't talk about, that we aren't aware of. Like, I believe I'm the only person that speaks on pacifier safety. And you think about it, right? And to me, I was like, I felt dumb because I was like, okay, if this is an issue, why aren't we all talking about it? Because, like, you think about it, it's like the one thing in your baby's mouth for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours on end, sometimes unsupervised. Okay. But when we were having issues with the baby bottles having lead, everybody was like, that was a huge topic that everybody was talking about. But we don't talk about the one thing they are using unsupervised and like finding holes in that market. I'm like, how are we not overthinking this? So it's just really funny what like becomes like a trend or something we think about or something we don't think about, right? The more we collectively start talking about car seat safety, now everybody's like becoming a car seat safety expert, right? And it just kind of becomes a thing, and it's just really interesting, and it's good that we do start talking about these things, right? Because there's things that we are unaware of, but then there are those things that we are quite frankly just overthinking as well. So it's interesting trying to keep like a balance of no matter what you do, right? Risk versus not, and kind of evaluating that and not worrying about things that we don't necessarily need to worry about versus the things that we probably should be paying a little bit more attention to. It's just fascinating to watch, like the things that become a sensation of talking about and worrying about and stressing.
No, 100%. And I think when I first heard about, what you do, and then when you started educating us on pacifiers, I even looked at my husband and I'm like, "Oh my goodness, you need to listen to this." I'm like, it never even crossed my mind.
It flies under the radar entirely.
Because I
Yeah.
guess you're such in a comfort zone of thinking, okay, the pacifiers, it's so common. We've been using it for decades. It's, something that it's supposed to be, keyword, supposed to be one of the safest things for the babies, right? And that's it. Like, okay, it's out there in the market, whatever, they give it to you as soon as they're newborns in the
Right.
hospital, like all of these
Right.
things. So of course you don't think about it because you're like, okay, if the hospital gives it to you, it should be
Right.
safe enough, right? Then
Yeah.
as
Let's
soon
put it this way. So before you had your baby, or right after you had your first baby, were you made aware to look out for hair tourniquets? Really? No one talked about, like, the hair wrapping around the fingers?
no, and you know what? I learned about that
Interesting.
probably after my first was like after 2. And when I had
Really?
my second baby, that's when, I was very aware of it. But that was because I saw only one post that just randomly
Okay.
came through, and it wasn't even like actually like in my actual accounts when you do the search and you see the little boxes
Yeah.
and then I see a little purple finger and I'm like, "What is that?" And that's when I clicked on it and I was like, "New
Yeah.
fear has
I
completely, like,
know.
unfolded.
That was something that was, like, drilled into my head, my friends, like, everyone in my circle that was, like, having babies, like, to the point it was, like, well known to give Nair as a baby gift because that's actually how you undo a hair tourniquet typically is a dab of Nair on it. So that was, like, a well-known thing, right? And that was something that we'd all talked about, and, like, every time my baby's crying and it wasn't her diaper, she wasn't hunger, whatever, we always check the fingers and the toes. And like it was like drilled into us and like our doctors brought it up. Like it was just talked about constantly. So what's interesting is how people in my circle, like that was like drilled into us and like commonly talked about. And I see like on social media, people giving it, especially a lot of pediatric nurses tend to give that as a baby shower gift. And I was like, that's actually really smart. But so that's talked about, but we aren't talking about how frequently babies' fingers are getting trapped in pacifiers
Yeah.
and start swelling just like a hair tourniquet. And they start swelling and sometimes need to go to the hospital and things like that, right? So it was just like a weird, like, aha of like, all right, people are talking about this. People make posts about this topic, right? All the time and give advice on this all the time. But like, we're not talking about when it happens with a pacifier and people aren't aware that it's happening with a so it just was like one of those things of like the baby bottle thing, but when it happens with the pacifier, nobody bats an eye. The hair tourniquets, people are like, oh my God, I know somebody that happened to, right? But when it's a pacifier, nobody bats an eye. So it's just very, very, very interesting. The raising awareness about like being aware of like the pros and cons of different aspects of different pacifiers. Because and that's the thing, pacifiers are an amazing tool when they're used in the right way, in the right timing. Like they are an amazing tool. They have amazing health benefits. And you can totally get mitigate the risk of, affecting the teeth and their oral development as long as you are getting rid of it in the appropriate time. But again, and that's the thing. Amazing tool when used in the right time, in the right place, in the right way, and then obviously getting rid of it when the
Yeah. Yeah, I actually didn't learn about the finger getting stuck in the pacifier until 4 years later when you posted about it. And I was like, "Oh my goodness, that could have easily been my oldest," because her pacifier was the what is it? The Tommy Tippy, something like that, that brand?
the
Yeah.
Ultra Air with the open back. Yep.
Yeah, and that's the one that she would use. And first
Mhm.
of all, like, as soon as we took it away, her teeth started going into place, but it completely, like, misshaped her mouth.
Was she on it?
Oh, she was on until, like, 3 years,
Okay.
and that was because we had yeah, whatever, like, at the end of the day, it is always easier to do it as younger, to take them
Yep.
off
It is.
anything, yeah, so anyways, yeah, she was on it for a very long time, right? And as soon as we took it off, her teeth started going into place, like,
Yep.
now you look at it and it doesn't seem
You
like
would
it's
never know.
yeah.
Got it
Unless
wrong,
you're a
yeah.
dentist, then that's when you're like,
Mhm.
I see that." But
Yep.
besides that, you
Right.
don't really see that. But yeah, she would use that one, and when I saw that, I was like, "Wow." Like, I would have never thought about that because,
Mhm.
I would think about, if it rips, okay, throw it away, like, things like that because at least the way that my brain the way that I think was like, if something breaks, they're gonna easily just yank it and just
Right.
can swallow it, choke on it, like,
Right.
huge fear on choking, so I'm like, but I
Yep.
never thought about the, "Hey, putting in the
The
finger there."
finger, right? And a lot of people aren't aware that you're supposed to replace your pacifiers. Most people have no idea, and that's what leads to the breakdown. And now we've got it broke, and now we've got a choking hat. So it just kind of becomes this whole snowball effect of like, and that's what we're trying to make people aware of is what to look for in a pacifier. If this is the type of pacifier you choose, at least you're aware of pros, cons, right? And of different aspects of pacifiers, the different materials. I'm calling it the four S's of pacifiers, is what it's like the four C's of diamonds, but for pacifiers. That you go through each thing and it has different pros and cons that we break down very easily, more simply to what you're looking for. So, the shape of the pacifier, the different uses for different pacifier shapes and pros and cons to each one, the substance, like what material is it made out of? Because a lot of people don't know those super popular natural rubber ones are actually latex, which can end up causing an allergy in your child. Not fun, not great. And they break down just from heat and UV. Great. You've also got the structure of it, like the design element, right? So if it is that open back, just be aware of fingers, right? If it's a closed design, just be aware you might replace them more frequently because if water gets inside of it, then you can't get it out. Now you've got bacteria and possible mold growth down the line, right? And then the last one is actually sanitation. Being aware of the pacifier you choose. How often do you need to replace it? That way you don't end up with a bacteria or choking hazard on your hands. And then the other element of that is actually, does the way you clean it fit into your lifestyle? Because some pacifiers cannot be boiled. Some cannot be put in the dishwasher. Some cannot be put in steamers. So there's different ways of sanitizing it that it needs to work into your lifestyle. That way you can keep your child's pacifier healthy and safe and clean for them.
Yeah, that's something that I don't think I ever even thought of, to be quite honest with you. And like now my second one has the Nook, right? And that one, water goes in it. So
Yep.
constantly having to, and that was never really a thought. And it was crazy because like here goes the moment. Like I wish I would have known, or I wish I would have had your pacifier in hand, when both of my girls were newborns. And I even showed you a picture of my second one. She loves your pacifiers, even though
Yeah.
we're slowly drifting away from the pacifier, era. And yeah, so there's things like that. I'm just like, why? Why is this
Hmm.
not talk about it more? Because, especially like those clips,
Hmm.
you posted about that and I was like, "Oh my goodness, like
I didn't know.
how many times I didn't know?" Because like once again, that's something
Yeah.
that's definitely one subject, like you said. It's one subject that nobody thinks about or talks
Yeah.
about or just like, you know, I don't know what it is, but
I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like we've just normalized using them so much and that maybe the baby bottle industry has just gotten so big that that's really just where all the concern has come to be. Another thing too, I'm wondering how much of it is because pacifiers are taboo. Are we not talking about it as much because we don't want to be looked on as like either a bad parent or people have there's so much misinformation out there about pacifiers and it's always funny when someone tries to like correct a video of mine and they say, oh, pacifiers are bad for oral development. And I'm like, actually, no, even the AAPD recommends using pacifiers for the first 6 months of life because there are no downsides and the benefits and the health benefits are actually there. But they say to wean by no later than age 3. Personally, because of their pacifier policy, at age 6 months is where we can start to see increased ear infections. 18 months is where we can start to see changes in orofacial development from pacifier use. So that's where I say I'm a huge fan of weaning anywhere from 6 months to 18 months. Wherever in there you've got a sweet spot of life isn't crazy with adding a new sibling, you're not dealing with potty training. You're not dealing with moving or starting daycare or any major life changes. And that 6 month to 18-month window is like the sweet spot. That way you can avoid the negative. But it's so funny because yeah, people are always quick to correct me. And I'm like, no, no, no. Like I'm actually going off of the research, the peer reviewed research. And, I'm probably the only pacifier owner that's like crazy enough to teach you how to get off the pacifier and not try to keep your kid on it till kindergarten for free. So it's just one of those things at the end of the day, all the misinformation, the taboo on it, because some cultures are actually anti pacifier. So it's just a really interesting area and people have such strong opinions on it. So I wonder if that's where the information just doesn't become such a hot topic to talk about, like what the actual researched information is.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I'm glad that you mentioned also the ear infections because that is something that nobody talks about either. And I didn't know about this until my oldest basically had like ear infections
Mm-hmm.
nonstop,
Yeah.
and we don't realize that between the bottles and pacifiers, that can lead into ear infections nonstop. We don't realize how they're all connected. And then when you go to
Yeah.
the ENT, you're like, that's one of the first questions. Oh, does she use a pacifier?
Yeah.
Does she still drink the bottle? And you're like, oh, like, is that
Oh.
connected? How is this? But it's not
Yeah.
talked about.
It's not, and it needs to be more because do I want to sell all the pacifiers? Yes, but do I want babies getting ear infections and not being aware? Like at the end of the day, as a parent, you have the right to information and then making the choice that's right for your child. Like for my child, the right choice for us was weaning off the pacifier at 14 months. We would have done 12 months, but she was teething. So we did 14 months is when we got off the pacifier, right? Being able to have the information is key to be aware because if your baby is screaming and you can't quite figure it out, right? And it's helpful to know, check their fingers, see if it's stuck in the pacifier and swollen because it goes very quickly. If they're getting sick a lot, have you replaced their pacifiers recently? Or are they older? Are they trapping bacteria? Are they starting to grow mold, which happens, unfortunately? So there's like a lot to it of like, it's just nice to know. It doesn't need to be this like big doom gloom thing, right? It's just good to be aware of it and be like, okay, now I know. Now I know what to look out for, you know?
Yeah. It's that, and the best part of like, pacifiers actually also help with SIDS, like help you prevent
Mhm.
your little one. That is something that there's is not talked about enough either because, you have all of these things that are like, yeah, no, maybe, yeah, no, but the
Yeah,
pacifier can actually save your baby's life at the end of the day. And nobody really talks about that either because there's so many people, like you said, there's so many people that are against it that you
I
start
know.
hearing so many crazy things that you're like,
Yeah.
but the pacifier can actually save your baby.
You know what's interesting is there's a few theories as to why. So there is a correlation between pacifier use and decreased risk of SIDS. Yes. But we don't know why. There's theories, but we actually don't know why, which I also find to be interesting. And you're still protected. Like you don't need to feel like you need to force the pacifier because of anxiety of SIDS. With regular pacifier use, even if like the pacifier falls out after they've fallen asleep, you're still covered. It still has a link there, which is wild. So they don't need to be sucking on it all the time. But with, regular pacifier use, even if it falls out, they still see a decreased risk, which is very cool. But something I want to make very abundantly clear, using a pacifier is not going to save you from unsafe sleep. So if you are making unsafe sleep choices, do not expect a pacifier to magically make it safe. It will not.
Yes, definitely. 100% true because, yeah, there's so many baby products out there that tell you that it's baby safe, that it's safe. And in reality, it is very scary information and stats and cases out there that is the complete opposite. We all need to talk about it. We need to be
Right.
educated on it. And these products needs to go.
Yeah. So that's actually a bit of the work I do. I'm on a couple of international safety committees, and these are things that we look at the CPSC website, saferproducts.gov. Whoever has access to go to saferproducts.gov and look up a product and see if there are any reported incidents on it. There's also a platform called the NICE, NEISS, and that is about 100 ERs nationwide that every year we get the data from them and you can actually go in and plug in like if you're using a specific product, probably not like the brand name, but you could always, for example, with me with the pacifiers, I went in and I typed in pacifiers and I saw all the about from 100 ERs, the ER visits that had the word pacifier in them and could read what actually happened. Now, it doesn't specifically say which make or model, but it's nice to see, hey, your toddler running around with pacifier in their mouth. If they trip and fall, we now have lacerations and things like that, to be mindful of it. So there is information that you, the public, can see, but there is a lot of information that is between the company and the CPSC, though, that is not going to be made public. But there are those two resources that you can go to be made aware. But those are like those resources we go to and see what's going on and pull the data from. Because if we're seeing so many incidents, and it's very hard, especially in the sleep space, it's very hard because you do have SIDS, you do have suffocation, right? So if you do have two unsafe items, what we believe are to be unsafe items in an incident, you can't really pin it on one of those items because we can't definitively say. So it's very, very, very interesting how it all works and how it all plays out, right? But there are amazing volunteers that are doing a lot of work looking at products and making sure that the warnings are what they need to be, the instructions are what they need to be, trying to make sure the education is out there. It's really cool that people care like they do. Very cool.
Yeah. No, and I'm so happy that you have created an amazing pacifier. And for everybody's listening, even if your little one has grown up, there we always have somebody, a friend, family members that have babies, and we always will always know somebody that has, tell them about this because when I'm telling you, I wish that I would have had this
Yeah.
Just incredible. But I'm definitely gonna be
Thank
putting
you.
your link on the bottom, all your information on the like, underneath, because this is just like I can talk with you for hours, especially on this, because it is just a topic that nobody talks about, and we need to talk about it.
Right. I know, I agree. And I all stemmed because I had a colicky reflux baby myself. And we went through a bajillion different pacifiers trying to get her to take one and all the issues I kept having with different pacifiers. And I was like, this is frustrating. And again, it was like one of those like things I was like, I don't know if I'm an idiot or if I'm a genius, but I feel like I found a hole here, hit the market. And then diving into the safety research was like it just all it's wild, but it's been a really interesting journey. And it's cool too, because like I get to meet people like you that, are helping all these families and people I wish I had in my circle 4 years ago.
Yeah, 100%, and it's just an amazing thing, and the best part of it is that I know that there's gonna be moms listening to this and just gonna be like, "Oh my goodness, I never thought about it. Let's start changing it," or, "I'm pregnant. You know what? Let's switch out. Let's look at this," because it is worth to at least look at and research on it because we're so, like you said, there's so much obsession about, like, formula and baby bottles and, X, Y, and Z, but nobody talks about when it comes to the pacifiers. And, I'm just happy that you're here and that we're talking about it. And one last thing that I do want to comment though is that changing the pacifiers, especially when it comes to the size, because making
Mm.
sure that they're the right age group, right? And I know that yours is like an amazing size because there's not that fear, like they're gonna like literally put it inside their mouth and choke on it. And I have had parents that tell me, oh, but they don't want to have a bigger pacifier. But I don't think nobody has really linked what can happen if the pacifier is too small and they can actually fit it inside their mouth.
Do you want me to touch on that?
Yeah, so would definitely love for you to touch on that.
Okay. So, just like baby bottle flow, there is actually no standard or regulation when it comes to sizing up your baby's pacifiers. So it's not something that is, okay, the 6 to 18-month one needs to be at least X big or wide or anything like that. So it could be the shield that got bigger. It could be just the nipple that got bigger. You don't actually know. And sizing up in pacifier, as long as, so for me, if the shield is nice and large, that's definitely a plus. There are so many incidents of babies shoving the age-appropriate pacifier, getting it lodged in their mouth and throat. The age-appropriate pacifier. And that's one of the things, like, because I report on these things, I inform people of, a baby got their finger stuck in a pacifier, a baby got this lodged in the throat, and the first question is, "Well, was it the age-appropriate size?" It was. In most of the cases, it was. It happened, especially a lot of those, like, butterfly designs where they get really narrow in the middle. I see those very commonly get through the baby's lip, and then now they're stuck in there. So it's one of those fascinating things. So I'm personally not a huge fan of sizing up on baby pacifier nipples. We'll talk nipple. Not a huge fan of it because you also don't want to, every baby's anatomy is different. And without your dentist actually looking in their mouth, I wouldn't want to cause more harm than not. But sizing up on like having a bigger shield is definitely a recommendation for sure, because there is a minimum size the shields can be, but it doesn't, the regulation isn't based on the shape. So going bigger is definitely going to be better and safer. And it's something a lot of parents simply aren't aware of that they do get into babies' mouths for sure all the time.
Wow, man. Like it
It
just gets
it's all marketing and it's all, and I get it. Like you do have different size pacifiers. Like a newborn, might need a smaller, absolutely. Preemie babies, they have preemie size pacifiers. There are absolutely scenarios, but yeah, it's not as important of a thing like going up with the flow on your baby bottle. It's going to be more baby dependent than age dependent, if that makes sense.
yeah, that makes sense. Wow, that's wild. That is wild. Well, I want to first thank you so much for coming on. And this has been extremely educative, for me. And I know for anybody that's listening to this, because it is a topic that we all need to talk about. And especially if you are a parent listening to this, or even has like know somebody out there that has a baby, even if you've already weaned out of that phase. So yes, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's always good to talk to you, and I love what you're doing. I think it's great. Keep doing it.
Thank you. So, if this resonates with you, I would love for you to give it a like, follow, and share this podcast with any fellow mom or parent. And if you have a story to share, a lesson, a story, a laugh, or a moment that changed everything, please send me a message and I would love for you to be my next guest on the show.